While riding her horse in the field, the horse suddenly slowed down and threw the girl off. Her mother was puzzled by the horse's strange behavior, but the real reason behind it is shocking. "Slow down, Kennedy," her mother shouted as Kennedy raced ahead on her horse, Sparkle, leaving her sisters and mother far behind. It was Kennedy's third time riding bareback, and she loved the freedom it gave her. She and her sisters had made a bet on who would be the fastest, and Kennedy was thrilled to have won, even though her sisters were more experienced riders. Kennedy and Sparkle were heading toward the open field where she practiced riding. While Kennedy enjoyed the speed, Sparkle began to slow down and eventually walked. Despite Kennedy's signals to go faster, the horse ignored her and continued at a slow pace until they reached a pond in the field. As Sparkle approached the water, Kennedy tried to steer him away, but he became fixated on the muddy puddle and started splashing water everywhere. Kennedy sensed something was about to go wrong and tried to turn Sparkle around, but before she could, she ended up falling headfirst into the pond. Her mother, surprised by the horse's behavior, initially looked shocked, but then burst out laughing when she saw what had happened. Kennedy's mother, Daisy, had grown up around horses for most of her life. Her parents lived in a rural area and had a large farm where they raised many animals, both for personal consumption and sale. Her parents got her first horse in 1980 when she was 6 years old, and she could never forget the joy she felt when she saw the magnificent creature. She named the horse Shaheen and got to ride him almost every day under her parents' supervision. Daisy and Shaheen built a strong bond, and she soon considered the horse one of her closest friends. Things changed when Daisy's parents couldn't afford to keep the farm and decided to sell it, including all the animals. They were moving to a new place where they couldn't bring Shaheen, Daisy's beloved horse. Even though Daisy couldn't keep horses, she never lost her passion for them. As she grew up, she trained to become a professional rider, despite her parents' disapproval and lack of support. Daisy started as an amateur and worked with a trainer to cover costs while she began competing. Her hard work paid off as she built her career, expanded into training, and acquired more horses. She found out that her old horse Shaheen had passed away, but she bought one of Shaheen's offspring to keep the memory alive. Daisy's husband also loved horses, and when their daughters were old enough, Daisy introduced them to riding. Her twin daughters enjoyed it, but Daisy noticed that her youngest daughter, Kennedy, had a special love for horses, especially ponies. Kennedy begged for riding lessons, but owning a horse was too expensive. After retiring from racing and selling most of her horses, Daisy decided to lease a pony for Kennedy. She worked with a trainer to lease a pony named Sparkle for 6 months. Kennedy fell in love with Sparkle immediately and eagerly asked her mom to take her to the stables after school. Seeing her love for the pony and her growing attachment to riding, Daisy wanted to encourage it, just like she wished her parents had. She reached out to the trainer, asking to get the pony for her daughter, but the trainer refused. The woman also had an attachment to the pony and wasn't willing to let it go. Sparkle was a kind and loving animal but was known for his unique temperament. Although he could be friendly, Sparkle was also stubborn and could be fiery. Whether they are owned for work, competition, show, or pleasure, horses are magical creatures, and just like other animals, temperaments vary from breed to breed. Clydesdales and Percherons are huge draft horses that were originally bred for work. Thoroughbreds and quarter horses are bred for speed, while some are just bred to be loved and ridden around for fun, like ponies. However, Kennedy still wanted him regardless and was always eager to spend time with the pony. Seeing how much Kennedy cared for the horse, the trainer eventually agreed to give Sparkle to her. When the little girl arrived at the stables for her training the next day, she noticed the new saddles, boots, and halter right away. It took her a while to understand why they were there, but once she did, she smiled excitedly and thanked the trainer for the gift. At home, Kennedy spent more time with Sparkle and Ernest. Her sisters had become experienced riders, and she wanted to catch up with them now that she had a pony of her own. She began learning how to race with him, and her mother was more than happy to teach her. Those lessons were filled with moments that both Daisy and Kennedy would remember forever. One summer, while riding together, Daisy let Kennedy ride Sparkle without a lead rope. Suddenly, Sparkle bolted and Daisy struggled to keep up. As they approached a gate, Kennedy panicked and jumped off into the gravel. Thankfully, her father was nearby and quickly carried her inside to rest. Sparkle stopped at the gate, puzzled by Kennedy's jump. She only had a scrape on her forearm and was soon ready to ride again, but she was scared. Daisy encouraged her not to be afraid and stressed the importance of building trust between Kennedy and Sparkle. She wanted Kennedy to understand Sparkle's behavior and learn how to ride safely and confidently. When they were done riding for the day, Kennedy and Sparkle would always stop by a small pond close to her home. She would sit nearby as Sparkle paddled in the water happily. Her mother was often there to watch them, ensuring that this simple act didn't get out of hand. It was important that the horse didn't submerge himself too deeply to avoid the risk of drowning. Daisy also made sure to clean the pony thoroughly afterward to prevent water from getting into his ears and causing an infection. To make it safer, Daisy and her husband built an equine pond for the horses, which also allowed their daughters to interact with them while they were swimming. However, the girls were forbidden from diving into deeper waters and could only stand in the pond as long as their knees remained out of the water. As much as they loved interacting with their horses in the pond, Kennedy was the sister who most disliked getting sprayed with mud. As the owner of a pony, she knew it was inevitable, but that didn't mean she had to get used to it. In time, Sparkle and Kennedy learned to trust each other until she could ride him without a saddle, even when they were galloping down trails or jumping over logs in the open field. When Daisy was certain that Kennedy could handle riding Sparkle, the little girl started riding with her sisters. Kennedy was able to keep up with them because of her ability to communicate effectively with her horse. So when Sparkle threw her off his back, Kennedy's sisters and mother couldn't help but wonder what had happened. Sparkle didn't seem to realize what he had done and started to wallow in the muddy puddle of water. Kennedy's pink helmet protected her from the impact of the fall, but other than that, her clothes were soaked and covered in mud. Daisy watched to see how her daughter would respond, and she was pleasantly surprised to see that Kennedy remained calm and didn't scream or panic. Kennedy looked at her pony with a smile on her face. Sparkle was wallowing in the water and made a soft sound to Kennedy, as if encouraging her to join him. But Kennedy allowed him to enjoy himself as her sisters laughed at the sight. She looked at them and shrugged. Just a few months ago, she might have panicked about what had happened. But the love and communication between her and Sparkle had grown a lot since then. She knew that the pony didn't mean any harm. He had probably thrown her off so she wouldn't enter the pond with him, knowing she wouldn't like to get dirty with mud. Whenever Sparkle saw water, he'd get excited and couldn't resist diving in. He threw Kennedy off to keep her safe from getting wet. As Sparkle rolled around in the pond, Kennedy stepped back to avoid getting muddy and to give him space. Daisy, Kennedy's sister, shouted, "You've been pony dunked," a fun term for getting dirty because of a horse's antics. The family watched as Sparkle splashed around happily. Once he was done and fully soaked, he stood up, and Kennedy took the reins again, happy with Sparkle's playful personality. When they returned to the stables, Kennedy cleaned Sparkle and gave him his favorite treats before heading home. In 2016, Kennedy and Sparkle were inseparable, but Kennedy would soon be apart from him. She moved to live with her aunt to attend school and train as a junior rider. Her aunt, who ran a training center, would help Kennedy pursue her dream of becoming a professional rider like her mother. Kennedy was nervous when she started riding Matt, a much larger horse than Sparkle. However, her experiences with Sparkle taught her valuable lessons, helping her bond with Matt and navigate the challenges of riding different horses. She also got to ride various horses and ponies, which furthered her skills as a rider.